Hi everyone, welcome to Real Time, and we're sort of diving into the world of television today because I am presenting to you my review of The Grand Tour. Now, for those of you who may not be aware, or possibly you live in a cave, The Grand Tour is basically a sequel, sort of a reboot to the long-running car series Top Gear. Sadly, the series came to an end a couple of years ago when Jeremy Clarkson had a fracas, I think it was called, with a producer, and basically he got the sack and James and Hammond turned down the chance to carry on working with Top Gear, and they left to do their new project, which is aptly named The Grand Tour. So a quick summary of The Grand Tour as a series. It was 13 episodes, and every episode would take place in a different location in what they called a travelling tent, which was oddly enough inspired by a tent that featured in True Detective. I would not have put that as the inspiration for the Grand Tour. Personally, I would have thought the Great British Bake Off would have been more of an influence. But yeah, I thought that concept was really good. It was literally touring around in this tent, and every episode more or less had a different location. I mean, there was 2 episodes that took place in the same location. Oh, no, scratch that. That was 4 episodes that took place in 2 different locations. So it was 2 in Whitby in England and 2 in Loch Ness in Scotland. Now, the structure in itself kind of follows what Top Gear did sort of remarkably well. You have a sort of introductory film, and then they have like a news segment, or what they are now calling Conversation Street. You then had another film, and then a celebrity-themed section, like on Top Gear, and then ending with another film. It more or less follows the same structure as Top Gear, but obviously the BBC being the BBC, they put restrictions on certain things that the guys could use and what they couldn't use, and it does have an effect on the show. Now, first kicking off with these changes that they had to do for the show, you know, it was always going to happen. So if you were really attached to the Stig and the starring the reasonably priced car, then you just kind of have to go with the flow and just accept that it's the way it is. And to be honest, I don't mind the American. You know, I'm just pleased that they're managing to get anything like what they had on Top Gear, where they use the same driver and they take cars around the Ebola drone, which I think is a phenomenal name for a test track. You know, it's in the shape of the Ebola virus, so they just call it the Ebola drone, with Z isn't straight, your name here, substation I think it's called, old lady's house, and field of sheep corners, which is very good. And apparently they weren't allowed to have a driver who remained silent while they drive, which is why the American, whenever they cut to him, he's making a comment about the car, about the weather and all that stuff. And I've heard it's kind of split audiences, like some people are okay with him and some people don't like him. Personally, I'm fine with it because he is a very capable driver, and you get to see these cars flying around this really quite challenging track. You know, it looks a lot narrower than the Top Gear test track, and there is a mixture of smooth surfaces and rough surfaces, so clearly he is a very skilled driver. Now, on to Celebrity Brain Crash. Yeah. Basically, if you haven't seen the show already, it's you know, I can't actually remember what the purpose of the game is. I think Jeremy refers to it as like a sort of reaction kind of based game, which is used in the RAF, and the intention was to sort of test all the different celebrities against each other. But there's just one problem. Every celebrity they invite to take part dies. Yes, you heard me correctly, they die. Okay, to be fair, the celebrities don't actually die. I want to make that plain right now. But yeah, in the first episode, I thought it was hysterical because their first guest was Jeremy Renner, and you see footage of him skydiving towards the studio. He's falling. The guys are talking over him about all the things they want to talk about. And then it cuts to a shot in the studio, and the three of them are looking out of this window, looking at this desert. And then you just see this body, which looks like Jeremy Renner, just go, and he did. So, and James sort of says, "Oh, does that mean he's not coming on?" And Jeremy says, I actually anticipated this, so I arranged a backup guest, so please welcome Armie Hammer." And then you see Armie Hammer walking across the desert, he's waving and that, and then he gets attacked by a snake, and he dies. So, it's not going too well, and they say, "Oh, is there anybody famous in the audience that we could invite?" Oh, there's Carol Vorderman. I mean, you don't know her in America, but she's really famous in the UK. Oh, she dead as well. Now, for me, the crowning glory in this series is the sheer effort that they put into it. I mean, in the first episode, Jeremy Clarkson states that everything we care about and everything we love about cars, we have poured into this show. And I don't think anybody can deny that they put some bloody good effort into it. I mean, the actual scale of the whole thing is just incredible, and it staggers me that they managed to get all of this work done in the amount of time they had, and it shows on screen. I mean, the locations they choose are brilliant. The actual cars are so good. There's a real diverse range of cars that they test and do challenges with. And the thing I love the most personally is the cinematography, because I heard that they were filming it in 4K, and damn, I mean, Top Gear was really innovative with the cinematography with regards to filming cars, but the Grand Tour has just taken it up to another level, and some of the shots are just stunning to look at, especially when you have close-up of cars sort of skidding through the dirt, and they do it in slow motion, but the definition remains the same, and you get all the specks of dirt flying up. It's a really evocative use of camera work and editing, and it's really pleasant to look at. The chemistry's still there, the banter's still there. When you watch the first episode, The Holy Trinity, for me, it was like a continuation of Top Gear. The tone felt the same, the dialogue between the three presenters remained the same, and it was just sheer bliss. And thankfully, no matter what is going on in the show, you always have Clarkson, Hammond and May to just pull the whole thing together. And even when an episode isn't as good as the others, it is still a joy to watch, just because you know these personalities and you just love them for it. Best episodes, I would put The Holy Trinity, the first episode, which is the McLaren P1, the Porsche and the Ferrari going against each other, which was more or less teased in Top Gear, but obviously it got rebooted before they had the chance to do it. So it was kind of like a big kind of message to the BBC that they did this as their very first episode. Just like, hey, you may have sacked us, but we're going to do what we were going to do anyway. And it was a bloody good episode. Other ones, Censored to Censored. That was a really good episode where they test out a Bentley 4x4, the Jaguar X-Pace, I think it's called, and the Range Rover Sport. And they start, it's in Germany and Austria, and it's called, I think, the Wedding Route, I think? No, it's like the Road of Love or something, and it starts in a town called Kissing. It goes through all these different ones, including one called Fucking, which is spelled exactly as you think it would. And that was a great episode because it was just a road test between these three cars, as they usually did on Top Gear, and it was a real joy to watch. And I'd say my favourite episode was actually the final episode, because everything about it was car related, and it was really good. Like, it ended with Hammond doing a feature all about drifting, so he learns how to drift, which was really good. And yeah, it was just a joy to watch. To be honest, in the entire series, there was only 3 things that I wasn't happy with when I saw. The first one was the second episode, which was basically about 2/3 of the program is taken up with this huge parody of Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise. If you don't know that, it's basically a story where every time he dies, he kind of goes back in time. So it's kind of like a video game. You die, you start again, and you alter your method to try and get through these stages. And they more or less do a parody of that. And while it was really entertaining to watch, it doesn't have much of a car theme, and it kind of just goes on a little bit too long for me. But to be honest, it was worth it just for that shot of Jeremy Clarkson running across the battlefield, waving his pistol in the air, and he looks just like an orangutan. And yeah, although it was funny, I'm not really in a rush to watch that episode again. The other thing I wasn't keen on was the episode after that, where they James and Jeremy do a challenge to do the original Grand Tour, which is like a European tour in a Aston Martin DB11 and a Rolls-Royce Dawn. And then Hammond kind of gate crashes the party with a supercharged Dodge Charger. And I like that idea. You know, that idea sounds typically Top Gear. You know, James and Jeremy are in the sophisticated European cars, and then Hammond's in a big American muscle car. You know, we've seen it before. What I didn't like was Richard and James felt like they were really playing up to sort of a stereotype that I wouldn't associate with them. Basically, as James is driving along in his Rolls Royce and Hammond's in his Charger, and Hammond really revs up the engine and he's like doing donuts and that, James sort of shouts at him like, kind of like an old man would with kids playing football in his back garden. And that's not what I associate with James May. I mean, I know that out of the three of them, he's kind of supposed to be portrayed as the old boring one. But yeah, that didn't really feel natural to me. And also with Hammond, while they're travelling through these European cities, he makes loads of comments about these sort of ancient cities and all that, and sort of really, I don't know, he sort of talks about them as though he were a complete sort of unsophisticated, uncouth moron. Like, really? I mean, 20 odd seasons of Top Gear, we know that Hammond isn't really like this, so that section just kind of felt to me like they were given characteristics that I wouldn't really associate with them. So yeah, that was one that I wasn't too keen on, and I'm trying to think of the third one. Crap, there was another one that I wasn't. Oh, that's it. It was the challenge in Morocco where they take the two-seater convertible sports cars, and Jeremy gate crashes the party with an Alfa Romeo. The actual challenge was fine, you know, and the three of them, they're all good, they're acting like themselves. It was just that scene where Jeremy's doing an experiment to see which of the three cars is the heaviest by building a car scale. And he puts the Mazda on one, and on the other he puts a load of animals, and two cows start doing it on the scale. And it just kind of felt like the joke went on sort of a little bit too long. And I remember thinking at the time, why don't they just put one of the other cars on the other scale so you can see which one's heavier than the other? But to be fair, it doesn't last too long, and they move on to something else pretty quickly. So even though I wasn't keen on those three bits, you know, it's 3 moments from 13 episodes, so you know, it's pretty minimal. But anyway, every place they went, they really did their research for things about the country they're going to talk about. So when they went to Abu Dhabi, for instance, Jeremy found out about this super train that will go from Abu Dhabi to I can't remember where else it was, at like 500 miles an hour. Like every single place they go to, there would always be something topical about the place they go to. And quite often, when they make the joke, the audience is laughing, and we're sat at home like, I don't get it because I don't live there. But then they do go on to explain it. So from a British point of view, I thought it was fantastic that they were able to interact with all of these people from around the world. And it was just like watching an episode of Top Gear, but it wasn't solely for the British. And I've got no problem with that, honestly. And the crowd responded to the guys brilliantly. It was a real joy to see how much they're really loved around the world. Things I would do to improve the show in season 2. Okay. I would find something to replace Celebrity Brain Crash. Not sure what it could possibly be, unless they could try and do a starting a reasonably priced car thing and maybe negotiate time with the BBC, but I don't really see that happening. And if they can't do it, I can't really think of anything else they could possibly do with a celebrity guest that doesn't involve trying to set a lap time. But to be fair, it's Clarkson, Hammond and May, and I'm sure they could think of something good to fill the time. And if not, you know, you can always just fill the time with another car review or something. I would also have the American doing a lot more track times, because although the track is really good and the sort of banter that goes on when one of them likes a particular car and it doesn't do so well on the board is really good, I think there needs to be a lot more lap times to put on the board to sort of give the Grand Tour lap board the same level of kind of legend that the Top Gear test track board had. I would love them to do a road test of the Volkswagen Up GTI prototype, just because it's a car I'm really looking forward to. Also, above all, I think I would say to let the guys be spontaneous. Just let them be as natural as possible, because that was the thing that really made Top Gear great, was their chemistry, and especially the laughs. The laughs they have are so good. They do have them on the Grand Tour, but there were just kind of sections that, I don't know, I wouldn't say they felt forced, but I would say in Top Gear there were a lot more moments that were naturally funny in the spur of the moment. So ideally I would like just a little bit more letting them be themselves, you know. Don't make James act like an old man and he shouts at everything that he doesn't like. By the way, making James May do things he doesn't want to do, that has to be a regular feature on the show, because that last episode was brilliant, where he spent 7 hours falling over in mud. That was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. So, in a nutshell, I would say the Grand Tour Season 1, I don't think I've put it up there quite yet with the very best of Top Gear, but to be fair, that is a really tough act to follow, and this is only Season 1. So for a first season, I would say it was fantastic, and I would give the Grand Tour 10 out of 10 for that. It was a real joy to watch, and those 12 weeks just flew by, and it was just superb. And if you're a fan of the old Top Gear, I would definitely recommend it, because the only other option was this.
Oh, go out! Oh.
Are you serious?
And on that bombshell, it is time to end. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.